So yesterday you all worked with this simulation, although you probably looked at it where it was like this, and played around with it and filled out a little worksheet that goes through to ask some questions. And this video is just for a little kind of review, kind of sum up some of the big ideas that I wanted you to get out of that video. And it's really going to sum down to 4 questions. And so, you went in and you put in electrons, you put in some neutrons, you just kind of played around with everything. And then as you changed it, we noticed that the element would change sometimes. We noticed that as we added some things, mass would change. As we added some things, the charge would change. That's what this is up here. And when we added some things, it didn't affect mass. And when we added some things, it did not affect the charge. And so we're just kind of looking at this kind of cause and effect type of relationship as to how all of these particles really interact with each other. And so this is the main question number one that you need to be able to answer is how can I change the element, right? Of these particles, whenever I add them in, which one changes the element? You need to be able to answer that. The second question is how can I make this element heavier? So this little number right here, how can I make this element heavier while keeping the element the same? So hopefully you can answer that. So here I'm adding electrons. What's happening with my number? Here I'm adding a proton. But remember, I want to keep the element the same. The third is, let me reset this, is how can I make the atom positive? So here we're looking at positive, or over here in the little box, we're seeing that it's a +1. How can I make the atom positive while keeping the element the same? So here I'm adding neutrons. Doesn't seem to be affecting my charge. Here I'm adding protons. I'm making it positive, but look, my element is changing. Here I'm adding electrons, and that seems to be, let's go back and look at that again. That seemed to be, look at this little scale right here. It's positive, but it's actually moving more towards the negative side. So how do I make it positive but keep the element the same? Well, we need to be able to answer that question. And then the last question is, why is the atom neutral? So here, when I have this equals 0, what is true about what I have here in the instance that it's 0? Okay. So to kind of just recap, how can I change the element? Hopefully that's where you're identifying that it's protons that change the element. When you add neutrons or you add electrons, the element never changes. Oops. How can I make it heavier? Well, if I add electrons, look at my mass right here, is at 6. If I add electrons, that 6 never changes. If I add protons, the number changes, but my element changes. So the only way to make it heavier is to add neutrons. I add neutrons, my element becomes heavier or lighter, but my element stays the same. How can I make the atom positive? Well, take away electrons. My element stays the same, but look, my number, look at this scale. It's going further and further positive. And the last question is, why is the atom neutral? Well, it's because, let's go simplistic. If I have a proton, it's +1. If I have an electron, it's 0. If I have 2 electrons, it's -1. But if I have 2 protons and 2 electrons, it's 0. So anytime that your protons and electrons are the same amount, so 4 protons, 4 electrons, they're going to cancel out. And those are the 4 questions that you need to be able to answer for this activity and for ultimately this unit and the test.